Wizard101 has hundreds, if not thousands, of bosses throughout its 19 different worlds. Of those, only a select few get the honor of becoming the final boss. But which of these final bosses is the best? Well, I'm glad you asked. Wait, you didn't ask? Well, I'm gonna answer it anyways. Starting with Lord Nightshade. Lord Nightshade is the final boss of the first world, Wizard City. While sifting through traces Malair left behind, you learn about a dark lord that resides in the haunted cave. After checking it out, you are greeted by none other than Lord Nightshade. Considering his and his minions' fairly high health, the difficulty of the fight is just in the right spot for beginner and intermediate players. Since he's never mentioned in the story until the moment you have to defeat him, Lord Nightshade isn't even the most prominent figure in Wizard City. Plugging everything into the tier list, I'm gonna have to put him in a C tier. Next up is the final boss of the second world, Croca Patra. Croca Patra is a supreme ruler of Crocatopia. While searching for the Croconomicon, we learn that Crocatep gave it to Croca Patra, which means our only choice is to defeat her. Since Croca Patra is a storm boss, she hits relatively hard. However, her health is low compared to the 1200 she used to be at. Considering the nerf, I'm gonna put her in a low B tier. Third on the list is the sneaky final boss of Marleybone, Moyardi. After Malair broke him out of prison, we are tasked with tracking him down before he steals the Croconomicon. We are unsuccessful and he locks himself in the infamous Big Bin. The tower is very difficult for players to solo, especially without AoE attacks. The final boss has more than double the health of Croca Patra and 2 minions consisting of a Wraith boss. However, with 15 floors that get very repetitive, especially if you forget the stray cat, I'm gonna put Moyardi at the top of B tier. Up next is the final boss of Wisteria, Lord Bramble. While competing for the Spiral Cup, we discovered that it was stolen and we are the #1 suspect. In order to clear our name, we must unravel this mystery and find the true culprit. Our suspicions lead us to Professor Drawers. After defeating him, we discover that the true mastermind behind it is Lord Bramble. The fight isn't hard at all and is kinda a letdown compared to the other bosses. With this in mind, I'm gonna put him in F tier. Fifth on the list is the infamous Jade Oni, one of the most iconic bosses in the game and the plague of Mushu's Emperor. With by far the highest health in the game up to this point, tripling Moyardi, this fight can be somewhat difficult. He doesn't hit very hard, but does debuff often. With such an iconic boss, I'm putting him in A tier. Sixth, and the final boss of Arc 1 is the man himself, Malair. After 4 worlds of chasing, we finally catch him. This fight starts the trend of a final dungeon and definitely was very challenging before the nerfs. Honestly, there's not much that needs to be said about him. We all know where he's going. A tier. Wait, don't get mad at me yet, just keep watching, it'll all make sense later. Next is the last of the side worlds, Grizzleheim. Grizzleheim actually has 2 final bosses, first the Raven fight in Ravenscar, and last the one that I am ranking as the final boss, the 4 Brothers fight. After uniting the 4 brothers to keep the Ice Titan asleep, we must first defeat them in Estrand, the final dungeon of Wintertusk. The dungeon is pretty difficult just like the rest of Wintertusk, so soloing could be out of the question at the right level. Considering the challenge, I'm putting them in a low A tier. Next is the start of Arc 2, Celestia, and its final boss, Myria. Honestly, Celestia is just one of those worlds that come out of nowhere, but Myria makes up for it a bit. I mean, how cool is it that we fight her on the literal sun? The fight honestly isn't hard at all, and neither is the dungeon leading up to it. For those reasons, she's going in C tier. This is definitely going to be the shortest one. Starburst Spider going straight to the bottom of F tier. That's all that I need to say. No more Zafaria. See ya. Okay, finally a good one, kind of. Avalon with the Pendragon. The Pendragon turns out to be King Art, who is believed to be dead, which I totally forgot about until my walkthrough. Besides the lore of the Pendragon and its ties to Avalon, he kind of comes out of nowhere. The fight isn't difficult, much like Avalon, but considering the lore, I'm putting him in B tier. Here comes one of my favorite worlds, Azteca. But don't think that just because it's one of my favorites that it can get away with bringing back Malair for no reason. Having Malair brought back from the dead by Morganth only to have him barely fight us in Xibalba is going to earn him a place in D tier. The final boss of Arc 2 Morganth is next. Honestly, I think Arc 2 is trying to beat Arc 1 too hard, and it really shows with the ending. This is going to be another quick one because we don't even defeat her, she defeats herself, and that ending sums up the whole arc. Such a disappointing end means that she's going straight to F tier. Next on the list is Shadow Malair from Darkmoor. You might be asking, why is he on the list but the other dungeon bosses aren't? Because it's my video. I'm just kidding. The real reason is that I think Shadow Malair ties into the first and second arcs better than Morganth does. Thinking back to the year Darkmoor came out, I remember just how game-changing this moment was. The difficulty of this dungeon had never been seen before, and the reward was all perfectly worth it. Story-wise, they put a bow on Malair's storyline, completely forgiving everyone he held a grudge on, and he finally got to rest in peace with his wife for forever. There's so much more that I could say about him, but I think he deserves to be in S tier. The start of Arc 3 Polaris is next with the Rat. The second arc did a great job introducing the next arc bosses, which leads us to Polaris to stop the spider's first son, the Rat. Polaris has a similar quest scheme to Dragonspire, where the main boss is unleashing a titan on the spiral, but the Rat is trying to end the spiral. The fight was fairly difficult when it came out, but now it's pretty easy. Since he doesn't stand out too much, he's going in B tier. Mirage is next with Grandfather Spider. Earlier in the world, we defeated Scorpion, which ended his hopes of being the final boss of Mirage. Spider took that spot, marking the first battle against a spiral god. Even after the nerf, Spider still has 30k health and is a challenging solo. Since we beat but not defeat him, letting him slip away, I can't put him any higher than C tier. Next up is Imperia Part 1's final boss, Medulla. Honestly, Medulla might be one of the laziest bosses and hardly does anything for himself until we fight him. Even then, he controls our allies to fight us, so I'm going to be quick with this one, D tier. The final boss of Arc 3, the Storm Titan. The Storm Titan is one of Wizard101's hardest bosses and the second time we fight a spiral god. At the time, I really hated this world and thought it didn't make any sense, but Part 2 makes it up for me. The Storm Titan fight was very challenging and fitting for an arc ending. The Storm Titan is going into A tier. This is going to be another one of those fast ones that devour tier. I hate it. Please get it away from me. Next is the start of the fourth arc, Caramel, and its final boss, the Paradox. After combining light and shadow to defeat the Ether Titan, we bring the nothing into the spiral in the form of the Paradox. The Paradox creates cavities throughout Caramel, and we need to find out why. This fight is a breeze compared to the two fights before it, but I do like the intro to design, so I'll put it in a B tier. Third to last is the Hall of Heroes in Myria. Definitely one of the most interesting fights in the game since we fight 8 enemies at once. Other than that, however, it feels really forgetful. For that reason, I'm gonna have to put it in C tier. Penultimately is the final boss of Novis, the Aeon. I absolutely hate farming this guy, but it's not the worst final boss. It's very easy to beat, but it does take about 10 to 15 minutes. To be honest, I still don't have a clue what Novis was supposed to be, so it's going in D tier. Last is the final boss of Wallaroo, Freddy Croker. Wallaroo is such a weird world, especially for the ending of an arc, and Freddy matches that. I like the world and I like Freddy, but they just don't feel like the end to an arc. I will say the ship fight is more of a conclusion to Novis than the Aeon fight, but it's more theatrical and has nothing to do with Wallaroo. Considering this, Freddy goes in B tier. That is the 100% accurate final boss tier list. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.